We have guests today that comprise the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission was invited to observe our meeting because of the capital budget presentation. So Marco will explain further how that's going to work, right?
Yep. If you'd like, I can get us started on just meeting logistics.
Yes, before we do that, I'd like to take a moment to welcome our newest commissioner, Daniel Garay. Thank you so much for being here, Daniel, and for replying. And we're excited to work with you. Do you want to say a few words?
Just happy to join. Grateful to the county board for appointing me, and looking forward to working with you all.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, I'll hand it over to Marco for all those introductory things that we have to do.
Great. Thank you, Jill. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Park and Recreation's May meeting. This is an all-virtual meeting. My name is Marco Rivero, the staff liaison to the PRC. I would like to remind our attendees that the PRC meeting will be recorded, and that began just a few minutes ago. We ask that commissioners, presenters, and attendees please mute your microphones and turn off your video feeds if you're not speaking. For those attending via telephone, you can mute and unmute your microphones by dialing *6. The chat box will be monitored to address any technical or procedural questions during the meeting, but should not be used for meeting discussion. Commissioners should use the raise your hand function on the top toolbar to be recognized during commission discussion. And assigned presenters may share their screens using the share content box above. As way of information, we'll be holding a public comment period. And in order to be recognized, please use the raise your hand function, and each public commenter will have up to 3 minutes for public comment. Staff will signal to the speaker once time is up. And for those attending tonight's meeting, we typically conduct public comment right after our initial commission business of adopting the last meeting's minutes and any other introductions. However, for the purposes of this meeting tonight, we'll have the CIP presentation from staff first, and then we will have public comment occurring. And with that, thank you very much, and I'll turn it over back to Jill.
Thank you, Marco, very much. And I neglected to say that the Sports Commission was also invited to listen in on the capital budget presentation. So I think now it is time to consider the minutes from the May meeting. I'm sorry, the April meeting, which I didn't attend because I was on vacation. Thank you, Shruti, for sharing that. And are there any comments on the April meeting minutes? Hearing none. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I believe our vice chair provided some comments, but I've included those within the draft.
That everybody else saw?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So if there's no further comments, I think we will adopt those by acclamation, by silence, or something like that. I'm not sure what the right word is. No objection. Okay. All right. Are we ready for the capital budget presentation?
I believe we are, and we have staff here to join us. Eric Beach will be providing the presentation.
All right, and so we will be taking ourselves, are you sure we're supposed to be taking ourselves off camera?
For the purposes of this meeting, yes. Unless you have any questions and then need to be recognized, then yes, you can turn on your cameras and your microphones.
All right, okay, so everybody turn off your cameras and your microphones so we'll have a nice, strong feed. Thank you. All right, Eric, take it away.
All right, thank you. So hopefully everybody can see the title screen on the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marco. So I want to thank everybody for having us tonight. For folks that I have not met personally yet, my name is Eric Beach. I am the Park Development Division Chief for the Department of Parks and Recreation. And I think you guys are familiar with our group. Marco and Michael come from our group on one of our planning teams. And so our group has 2 planning teams, design team, construction management, and our asset management group that works through managing all of Parks assets and the CIP. And so also tonight with that, Tim McIntosh, Bob Capper, and Brittany Canny are here. That's DPR's CIP team. And so all of this information, they've all had a hand in pulling it all together and kind of keeping it organized and hopefully giving us a good plan here for laying out our investment on the capital side for the next 10 years. So I do appreciate, again, fitting us in tonight. You are the first people in the county that are going to see detailed information in the CIP. Normally, and what was originally expected was the manager was going to release the CIP at the last board meeting. That was not done, as Mark Schwartz, County Manager, mentioned today at today's briefing to the board that they did at 4 o'clock. Was that this is our first is one of the largest and most fullest, if you will, CIPs we've had in some time. The last CIP was basically the county getting its footing after coming out of the COVID years where we had abbreviated CIPs. And so you'll see just by the sort of amount of information I've got here for just parks, you can kind of get a sense when you think about we're only about, I don't even know if we're a third of the overall CIP. I think the overall CIP is almost a $1.4 billion plan, and parks is about a little over $300 million piece of that. So I will kind of show you that and how that lines up here. And so folks that, may or may not familiar, CIP is our 10-year planning document. And we do it, the county adopts one every 2 years. This year's is FY25 to the fiscal year 2034. The first 2 years are of this program, or what the voters will vote on. If the board approves it, they will do so in July. And then they will come back and set the language at that meeting for the referendum. The referendum will then be in front of the voters in November. And so basically that referendum is funding the first 2 years, the 25 and 26 years of the CIP. And then the from 27 on is what we call out years. But generally it lays out the plan that would look very familiar if you were to track this over years. It'll look generally similar from year to year to year, with some changing based on county's ability to manage the program itself and the cost of the program. So very quickly, there's a lot in this. This is actually going to be very similar, to this presentation you would see when we go before the county board. Part of the reason, sorry, I got off track. Part of the reason we are here tonight is that we want to give the opportunity for the commissions to see this information because DPR's work session with the county board, which I believe all the chairs will have the opportunity to come and make comments at, or ask or put some questions and their thoughts to the board before the board takes up the item for themselves, or this discussion for themselves, is going to happen on June 11th. It's from 3 to 5 p.m. and we are with some DES programs, facilities, and I think Arlington Neighborhoods program and others. So there will be those 3 topics on the June 11th. And then from there will be a public hearing on July, I think, 2nd, and then the adoption at the board later that month. So the challenge was getting to everybody before the June 11th work session so people could have a good understanding and work with the chairs to get comments. So just kind of wanted to give you a little preview of how this is going to set up. So I'll go fairly quickly and people can ask me clarifying questions and obviously we'll have a good discussion afterwards. Yes, Jill.
I just wanted to interject at this point while we're talking about the schedule that Eric has graciously agreed to meet with the commission chairs of the 3 commissions next week. So please, if you're unable to get your question answered today, or if you have a question that occurs to you after this, please get your questions to your commission chairs, and we will bring those to the meeting with Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, because that's sort of the hybrid approach in order to be able to get everybody fully up to speed for that the meeting on the 11th. So when we approach the CIP, we do with a couple things in mind. It's a very high level. We look to be able to support and continue existing projects or commitments to outside organizations, to developers, to APS, and other things like that. We look to keep up our program of replacement, basically keep everything in a state of good repair. We look to see how we're distributing our projects and making sure we're doing it equitably. And we look at the public spaces master plan, which is our overall strategic document for the park system. Just a real quick mention, there's some very large major near-term projects in the CIP. Some of those you've seen before, like the Arlington Boathouse. We have investment in Crystal City Parks and Public Space. Drew Park, there's a conversion happening at Kenmore Field to take that from natural grass to synthetic. a very large investment in Roslyn Gateway Park, and we have 3 small parks in the Virginia Square neighborhood we call 3 urban parks, which are Hershel, Milliken, Gumball, and Maury. I think everybody here is probably very familiar. We have a very robust system for the size of our county. We have 147 parks, almost 1,000 acres of land. We have 82 playgrounds, and I'll just kind of give you a scattering of these. 55 miles of trails. We have basically 15 synthetic fields, and then we have a multitude of picnic shelters, restrooms, bridges and low water fords. We have 250,000 trees in the system, and we have thousands of picnic tables, benches, grills, etc. That all eventually wear out and need replacement and do cost money to replace. The way we manage all that, we kind of take a 4-pronged approach. We have what we call our asset tool. Our asset tool is a third-party contractor that we use and this was done in 2020, completed in 2023. They basically go out to every single park. They will review every piece of equipment asset that we have and look at how much remaining useful life it has, and look at its condition. Basically, see what state it is in. Our synthetic fields, we look at. We generally replace, and I'll talk a little bit more of this on an 8-year cycle. But the main thing driving that are what we call the GMAX impact testings, and everybody always asks me what GMAX means. But basically, it's a safety measure to ensure that if a child were to fall or an adult were to fall, that the
Is Eric frozen?
I was wondering if that was Eric or if it was the whole group, but I think it might be Eric.
Yeah, I think he froze for me too.
Yeah, I'll send him a Teams message, Marco, just to let him know that he's frozen.
Okay, thank you. Hold tight, everyone. We'll figure this out.
Am I back?
Oh, yes, you are. I
Okay.
can hear you now, Eric.
All right, so I lost power really quick. So that's the danger of virtual meetings.
Just so that you're aware, Eric, your face is still frozen on this screen, but I can hear you.
Okay. Let's see. I'm getting set back up. I'm going to turn my camera off and just go with the presentation for right now. Yeah, I'm not sure. I lost power and then it came back on and computer came with it. So I'm not
Sounds good.
sure what happened. Oh, happened again.
Eric, will it help if I bring up the presentation?
I think he may be gone at this point. Let's see.
I think he dropped off. He may have had
Yeah.
He may have had to restart.
We'll take a quick pause, everyone, and once Eric rejoins us, we'll get started again on the presentation. Hang tight for a few minutes.
Marco, do you have a copy of the presentation?
I do not. So, but I
Marco,
believe others on staff do.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Would it make sense for Robert to go ahead and upload it, or?
I can share where Eric was if you want to read it a little more closely.
That might be helpful, Jill. I
Yeah,
don't
he
know.
was going really fast.
Okay.
Tim, were you able to reach Eric?
I'm going to
He
send him
did
another.
He
Sorry.
did send me a message, Tim, saying he lost power again, so I'm sure he's trying to find an alternate power source and get booted back up. Never fails. Technology.
Yes,
Marco, can you see that?
I do. Mhm.
You do. Good.
Hey, Bob, I am back. I lost power for a good 30 seconds there, but I got everything
Okay.
rebooted and started again. Let me flip it over to me. I'll share
All
my
right.
screen and
I will stop sharing.
we'll try to do this again.
Eric, if you lose power again, one of us can, well, Bob has the presentation up. You need to get on your phone. We can keep the presentation going.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure what's going on in the Penrose neighborhood tonight.
I have power. I think I'm like a couple streets away. So
That's very strange.
yeah.
Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so get you back up to where we were. Okay, so here, the trails we managed through a pavement condition index, and this is a sort of a national set of standards that's used on roads. It applies to trails, and we try to do that every 4 to 5 years, and we last did one in 2022. And then we had a third party that came in and did a assessment for all our pedestrian bridges and low water fords across all the trails that we have within our park system. Just a little bit of background. Over the last 4 years, we've been able to put almost $40 million into our maintenance capital plan, which is mostly when you see playground renovations, and the sort of smaller renovations of our parks and system. We look to have a 20-year life cycle there. We've been able to touch about 30 of those parks that have been new or fully renovated. And I'll talk a little bit more about our equity factor that we created over this last year. Synthetic fields, we have about 8.9 million invested in the last 4 years, and I already mentioned the Kenmore project, and we'll talk a little more in depth about that. The multi-use trails, we put about 6.4 million in the last 4 years, and we are looking. We've done about 4.62 miles have been replaced since 2022. The condition assessment was done. Pedestrian bridges. This was somewhat relatively new program for us, but we've been able to address 3 bridges. We just did some repair work at South Nelson Street, and hopefully these are the type of things that once they're done, they have over a 50-year life cycle, meaning that we won't have to come back to them, and we can keep moving on through all the assets that we have. One of the things for folks that may have tuned into the PAYGO presentations as part of the operating budget adjustment was some of the work we've been doing on sort of achieving what we call achieving racial equity. The wheel on the right is probably very familiar to people. This is sort of our conversation that we have when we go into projects or planning, looking at who's not participating in our engagement, where are we missing, how do we know who's missing, what impacts they're having on different neighborhoods and populations. But we've now taken that a step farther. We use the asset management tool study that I had mentioned earlier, which basically scores every item in the park on a score of 0 to 100. Those are rolled up into a score for each individual park. And so that just gives us a pure condition of actually the physical condition of the asset. However, the last year we've worked to create an equity factor, and basically we take each census tract in Arlington and we're looking at it for the greatest ethnic diversity, which have the greatest household density, which have the greatest number of children, and which have the lowest average income. We take those factors, we combine them, do a little bit of math to set them on the same 0 to 100 score as the condition, and we add those together. And the result is that the idea is that the Arlington neighborhoods with the greatest ethnic diversity, household density, youth population, and lowest income levels that have parks that are in the poorest conditions should be a priority. And that is how we begin to set, okay, what projects are we doing? Why are we tackling certain projects? And what we're trying to do is target them into neighborhoods that have been historically may not have, for various historical reasons, may not have had as much investment in them. So we want to try to bring some parity to that. So one of the things that just may relate to that, so you can kind of see how that works. The numbers here are just for what we'll talk about later in our master plan category, but these are new parks. And so you have a park condition rating, which on a 0 to 100 tells you how well the equipment is doing in that park. Then you have an equity factor from 0 to 100 that says of sort of the conditions in that neighborhood. And when you pair those together, you get a total park condition and equity assessment. So a lot of our parks are existing. We combine those together. We know what where we are in the range from 0 to 200. And then for the new parks that don't exist yet, obviously we don't have a park condition rating, but we still understand where the equity factor is and can look at see where we want to target new investment. For the CIP, we basically have the technical side. It'll get a little confusing when I talk about programs, but for the technical side of the CIP, our programs are basically in 5 categories. Park maintenance capital, which is the one I mentioned that manages the playground renovations, some courts renovations, things like this. We have a parks master plan category, which is sort of the new parks like Gateway Park and like Longbridge Park was there. We have a synthetic field program. We have a trail and bridge modernization program and our land acquisition program. And obviously our parks master plan category is the largest, followed up by the parks maintenance capital. And then with the other 3 kind of sort of equally split. By source, new bond issues as part of the RFP I was talking about funds the majority of this, about 64% of our work. We have a very sizable developer contributions from the site plans, and thank you to the commissions who work through those processes, help fund all this good investment in parks. And then we have pay-go, short-term financing, and some other things like TIF that pay for the CIP. What we've done in the past with this program, and hopefully people are enjoying some of these. We've been able to do improvements in like Towers Park, Tuckahoe. We resurfaced the playground. We updated Marcy Road Park. We fixed bathrooms in Madison Manor and Fort Scott, and we renovated Alcova Heights Park. For the fields, synthetic fields, we replaced Washington Liberty, Barcroft, Rocky Run, Wakefield High School, and the Gunston Bubble. And so what it kind of brings me up to now is what's actually probably people most interested in, what's in the new CIP. And so we'll kind of start with the smaller maintenance capital program. We are asking for funding to upgrade Doctors Run Park. There has some aged equipment there. We need to do some ADA fixes, site circulation, and improve the stormwater. Arlington Hall West Park, we have a playground there that is no longer it has equipment that's breaking down, but it's no longer manufactured, so we can't even buy the slide brakes to put a new slide up there. It has to just be taken away, and so we're starting to get into that area where we're reducing the equipment and the opportunities for people to play on that area. And then we've created this project called Pooled Park Projects. There are about 5 or 6 projects, or actually more like 7 or 8 projects in this that tend to be a little too small to be individual CIP projects, but they're a little bit too large for our operating maintenance. So they're probably like $100,000 price range. And so we're grouping those parks together to be able to go and address a whole bunch of parks at one time and try to make those little fixes that would just improve it. And then also improve some of the condition score, equity scores that we talked about earlier. We have some request in for replacing the Bon Air picnic shelter and playground. We're looking at the Cherrydale playground, and people are probably familiar with that. It's a very steep playground, very non-ADA compliant with much older equipment that really needs some love and care. And then we're also looking at Douglas Park Phase 2. Folks may remember this from our pay-go presentations in the past. Douglas Park Phase 1 is the west side of the park, where it tends to be the more natural side with the trees and shelters and things like that, sort of more of the passive recreation side, if you will. Douglas Park Phase 2 is to, after we get through completing Phase 1, to move into Phase 2 and try to touch the playground and its accessibility and the pedestrian bridge and some of the other things that are in Douglas Park. We're putting Crystal City has always been a challenging category for us. In that the park development in Crystal City has always been tied to the development process, meaning that a lot of the spaces aren't owned by the county, so we have to wait for the development to come through, and then in order to be able to develop them. And so we have a pretty sizable investment in Metro Market Square. It's at the corner of 18th Street and Crystal Drive, almost $9 million. And that's where it's intended to be paired with the new Crystal City Metro entrance that's being built between the county and WMATA and the developer over there. We're looking at a pretty good investment in Center Park, which is something that we've just now recently received the easements to be able to guarantee the public access out there. And then a smaller park at the 15th Street. When DES comes in and does some road work over there, they're going to be leaving us some location for, I think it's just a little bit under an acre of public space in that location. Gateway Park is one. I think hopefully folks have been participating in our engagement, which is currently going on. Originally from the last CIP, this was intended only to be funding Gateway East, if you will, which is the right-hand side of this yellow blob in the image. However, with the CoStar agreement that the county struck for exchanging the observation deck there, for a contribution to Gateway Park for almost $13.9 million. It's allowed us to go ahead and renovate and rebuild both the east and west side of Gateway Park. And so we've just kicked off the master plan process and have that underway. The 3 urban parks I mentioned earlier, this was to look at Maury, Herschel Milliken, and Gumball parks. And to do it in a comprehensive way. So we're not duplicating services or making sure that all the parks can kind of work together. And so this is one that has been in the CIP. It has been kind of gotten pushed around for a lot of years, and the county and the board, the manager, is looking to honor this commitment that we have been talking about for a long time. Drew Park is new to the CIP. It's a little over $2 million. We have, if folks are familiar with Drew Park, across from John Robinson Junior Town Square, there was a duplex. The county has owned half of the duplex. You can see in the picture here, the one on the right, because there's a couple community gardens and some art on it. We have recently acquired and we're able to purchase the other half of the duplex. So we are underway to demolish that old house and incorporate that in Drew Park. And so Green Valley has been very interested in working through a master plan and then to try to get a design and implement some park improvements through Drew Park. There's a potential for a new park at 26 and Old Dominion. This is sort of near the trailhead up there by the Salt Dome at Marymount University. And so there is some planning, design, and construction placed into the CIP in order to undertake that. We have the Arlington Boathouse, which is $28 million for both the lower and the upper side portions of the boathouse. Marco is very familiar, as he's been working with National Park Service and getting our agreements into place. We're looking at bringing on a firm to get master planning kicked off here later this year, very early next year. But this is in order to meet the agreements we have with National Park Service to have this under construction by or at least starting construction by 2029. And so the manager is recommending that we still honor these commitments and move forward with that boathouse. Kenmore Middle School is included. It's just under a $10 million project to convert the 2 grass fields to synthetic turf, improve the lighting, circulation, and this is another one that we have about $2 million outside fundraising that we've been working with 2 user groups on to bring some money to the table. And then we have a cost share with Arlington Public Schools at 30%, DPR at 70% after the $2 million is taken off the top of that project. So that covers what I would call the near-term part of the CIP. The long-term part of the CIP is from 2030 out to 34 or 35. And so we have a good amount of projects in that category as well. There is money in here for master plan design and construction of Quincy Park. It's another very sizable project that has some aging infrastructure, but also is at the heart of Arlington and is a very important part of our system. And so that is included. Penrose Square Phase 2 is included in FY 31 and 34. This is the other half of Penrose Square. Currently, by the Giant on Columbia Pike, we have a piece of art in the spray ground there. The parking lot outside the CVS is intended to be incorporated into that park and expanded once the development takes place in the adjacent building. Shirlington Park is part of the 4 Mile Run Valley master planning work that happened several years ago on a county-wide level. And so this is some improvements to create some better entry, try to increase the access to the nature along the stream edge, and some stormwater improvements for that park on 4 Mile Run Drive. The Fairfax Drive public spaces, there's a placeholder here out in FY32 and FY34. This is in response to the Clarendon sector plan update that was adopted, I think, about 2 years ago. That included converting a portion of Fairfax Drive by I think it's St. Charles Church into a park and plaza. And so this is a placeholder to be able to do that. Langston Boulevard public space. This is a placeholder to be able to, have a commitment to helping develop that plan that was adopted last year. There is not a specific site determined with Langston Boulevard. This would be more of just to be able to be responsive once some of the development starts taking place underneath the plans up there. We also have funding for the master plan for Virginia Highlands and 2 spaces, 2 smaller parks there, 20th Street South and South Lives, and I think that's supposed to be 18th Street, to be able to plan all 3 of those together, to be able to, again, make sure we have a good synergy between all 3 spaces. This will also incorporate the Pentagon State Sector Plan call for Grace Murray Hopper to be incorporated into Park, to be incorporated into Virginia Highlands. This will enable us to have do our work with the community to see what a good plan would be there. So now another part of the CIP that I mentioned is our programs. Now these are not our technical 5 categories. These programs are programs within our master plan category. One is the emerging uses program. This is intended to be able to, over the 10-year life cycle of CIP, funds, I think it's like $1.5 million the first year, and then every other year, roughly that amount, a little bit, kind of goes up and down a little bit, for uses that basically are necessarily on the radar, but may cause some need, because we might have some challenging situations with new uses in parks that weren't there before, or things that are people cutting, trends that we might be seeing that we want to address right away. The CIP process to fund new parks and new things is a very long process. It has to become a thing, and then the board has to be convinced to include the CIP. Then it goes in the out years. So by the time you're reacting 10, 12 years down the road. The emerging uses program is intended to give us a little bit more flexibility on smaller programs. And so, for example, the last go round, a good chunk of the funding was used for creating the multi-use pickleball courts and the renovations at Walter Reed to be able to respond to pickleball. But in the future, there could be some other uses such as pump tracks and mountain biking or other new trends that we just don't know. And those are really just, for example, or mountain biking, but those are just examples. We will kind of be able to plan that out at each CIP as we move forward. The Natural Resiliency Program, we're very happy that the manager is recommending to continue to fund this program, and it's sort of the full way we've had proposed it. And this is where we're able to try to address our natural capital, and basically looking at being able to do things like reforesting, create meadows, fix erosion, issues in our streams that may not be part of the priority stream program that DES runs. And so they obviously have a very strong need to deal with stormwater, but Arlington County parks have many, many streams and branches and outlets that have either been hardened with concrete over the years, and that's not the greatest natural way to address something. And so this program will let us do a multitude of things with that, and we're pretty happy that this is here in the CIP again. New to the plan is Park Athletic Courts program. This is a program that funds a little bit of money every other year, about $500,000 over the life of the CIP, in order to be able to maintain our existing courts, and to look at potentially implementing new courts. So, for example, when we have to repave tennis courts or basketball courts, or now we would have pickleball courts, but also we have futsal courts that aren't necessarily paved courts. They're more of a little synthetic turf field that's not part of the bigger program. That has come to kind of operating maintenance, and it's been very sort of haphazard. And then so in order to kind of maintain our state of good repair, we've proposed this Park Athletics Court program, and the manager's been willing to put it forward. So that is a new program for the CIP this year. Now, coming back to our actual programs. When I mentioned the original 5 sort of technical categories, we have 3 programs that are part of that. One is our trail and pedestrian bridge work. And so the CIP allocates about $20 million over the 10 years. This helps us replace our trail segments, helps update our bridges, repair our bridges, replace the bridges, and manages our studies to be able to see how we're progressing on that work. I'll have a little more detail about that in a moment. Our synthetic turf replacements is funded at about $21 million over the 10 years. This allows for 8 to 10 year useful life cycle. Make sure we're maintaining that GMAX. I think I was talking about that when I got cut off, so I'm not sure we heard about that, but that is the safety measure to make sure that the fields are still safe for play. And so I think the key thing that is we have replacements coming out of Greenbrier and Yorktown, Thomas Jefferson, and one of the fields at Longbridge is identified up for it. It also funds the conversion of those fields at Kenmore that I mentioned earlier. One of the good news thing, and it may not be as full as we have seen it, but the land acquisition has more than doubled for this CIP. The first year is first year of the cycle will be a little bit lower to about $1.5 million in 25, but then from then every other year it goes up to about $3 million. And so the previous CIP funded about $5.5 million, and this CIP is making about $13 million available. And so we think that's a positive. We're heading in the right direction there. So I mentioned the fields. I won't spend a lot of time here, but just so folks know that we have a 10-year replacement schedule. And so when I'm talking about these fields that we're replacing, it's based on this schedule. Sometimes the schedule tweaks a little bit because we might get a little more life out of one field, or one field may get incredibly amount of use, and we've got to pull it forward a year. But generally, this gives us a understanding of how to plan for it over the 10 years. We've done the same thing with our trail and bridge program. And so you can see that we have lots of bridges in design, one in Oklahoma Heights Park. We have 2 at Bluemont. We've got 3 at Rock Springs, followed up in 25 with 1 in Douglas Park, Gateway Park, and then Glen Carlin Park. I won't go through all of them, but then we have the construction scheduled out. We have our Ford repair, and then we've got our trail and milling, which is almost a yearly ongoing thing. So it says TBD, and that's because we will look and see how our PCI is doing and adjust to the most prioritized areas that we could do. And then we have some things because we have solidified all the real estate agreements with Gateway Park. There are several pedestrian bridges there and the bridge itself that we have to inspect those in every other year schedule to get state approval. So we've got that scheduled in. As far as land acquisition, just a little bit more follow up on that. One of the things I think everybody on this is probably really tuned into is that the Public Spaces Master Plan said in 2019 that one of our top priorities was to acquire 30 acres over 10 years. This is a little bit of an update. And so we have been working through our acquisitions through a variety of money, either through DPR funded money or other county money that the managers made available for us for, like, for example, Lang Street Garden in Drew. DPR did not have any dollars available, but they found money from the county's coffers countywide, if you will. We were able to purchase those, but we've acquired about 14.24 acres since the 2019 adoption of the PSMP. And then our other big part of our land acquisition program is all the work that you guys do as commissions on the site plans, being able to add space via the site plan process and others. We've added about a little over 9 acres there. So we're just under 24 acres since 2019 that we've been able to add to our system. Real quickly on this program summary, I think the key thing is we have it's a 10-year. These are it's divided into the 5 categories that I mentioned. We have a 10-year total of $308 million. We have sort of a low year out in 29 of 15, and then we have a high year in 27 of 48 million. And the numbers that you see here on a year-to-year basis also have a lot to do with what other programs are going on in the county with DES maintenance of facilities or transportation commitments. And so it's sort of a balance of how we fit in all our needs and their needs over the years. But I think the important part is I think the $308 million is a pretty significant investment for the county for Parks and Recreation. And so we're pretty happy that we have a good footing to work with here. Couple real quick takeaways. Mentioned the 308 million. We are looking for, if the board approves this manager's recommendations, the referendum in the fall will be about $24.5 million. We've been able to do that investment in Crystal City, even given the fluidity of that capital program. But all aspects of the capital program are kind of are a little bit fluid, and I think we've tried to be nimble to adjust to that. We talked about the boathouse, meeting the deadline there. We've got the investment in Gateway Park because we want to meet that commitment of the private development funds, and so we want to be able to bring both halves together. And then we are continuing our emergent uses program, natural resiliency programs. And again, the last CIPs, we were able to successfully get them in and hoping that we could establish some programs to keep them going. And it seems to be agreed upon that we're onto something good there. And so they're included again. We've established that Parks Athletic Courts program. And as I mentioned, we have got a little bit of a good influx of reinvestment into our land acquisition program. So, Jill, I think that covers it for me. So I'm happy to take any questions you have, and hopefully I didn't talk too fast and everybody can still understand me.
Well, you certainly made the deadline. I have you at right on time. So thank you very much, despite the power outage. We really appreciate all this amazing work, and thank you very much for the presentation. I guess I'll kick it off. I'll ask one question. I have quite a few, but I don't want to hog the microphone. So let me, Marco, does that sound okay to you if our commissioners go first and then we give it to the public commenters, or would you rather reverse that?
I think that works out fine.
Okay. So I had a question on the natural resiliency, you know, where we have the reference to the natural capital, and I love the concept. But in practice, in the past 2 years, my understanding is the way it's rolled out is it doesn't actually come into, we don't actually use the funds unless there's another capital project going on. Do I have that wrong, or or can you say some more about how that's been working and how you expect it to work in the future?
Sure. No, I don't think so. I think one of the things that might cause a little confusion is that part of our description for the natural resiliency is that we can use it for reforestation, we can use it for invasive control, we can use it for stream restoration. We also talk about how we can use it to add biophilic elements to existing projects, or we can use it to look to help projects become flood resilient so they can coexist and do both. We actually have not been looking at it for the last two pieces I've described. We have been focusing on projects that are independent. And so we have taken our time getting the program started because we want to make sure we do it right. So that way the board is enthusiastic about reinvesting into it. And so we have been looking through a series of stream restoration projects, some creation of meadows, and some other things like along that line. We have just started a stream restoration project for Mile Run in Glen Carlin Park. There was a severe erosion coming out of an outfall there that we are trying to correct and then naturalize it rather than using rock and things like this, trying to use trees and shaping the stream bed. We have other ones that we are in the sort of scoping stage right now. And at some point I could probably come back and talk and give them a little more robust overview of that. But I will tell you, we have not pushed anything out sort of prematurely just because we want to make sure we're getting the right footing so people can understand the difference and what we're doing. So while it can be used for things paired with the products, we have not actually used it that way or have not looked to do it that way yet.
And have you used that money for invasive plant removal?
So we as I was mentioning, we've only had the one project that has started on the stream restoration. So there was some Bob, you'll have to remind me, Bob Capper, if there was some invasive removal with it. There's tree plantings, and there's the stream restoration there. There would be invasive removal when we look to do some of the meadow establishment ones. We'll come in, we'll take the invasives out, and then get good plantings and good soil, good plantings to happen. But independent invasives, we have not targeted that yet. The only thing I will mention about that is we absolutely could, but there has been a fairly high influx of money into the operating budget, particularly one time for that. And so we've tried to use wisely people may disagree. We try to use wisely and spread the money around to some different projects that, that we could tackle.
Right.
So the invasive could be part of some of the things we're doing, but we haven't done an independent invasive removal with it yet.
Okay. I mean, I was just thinking about our last year's letter and talking about the
Mhm.
keying the benefits to things. I mean, with the stream restoration, help us on our Chesapeake Bay goals, for example.
Yeah, oh, certainly, because wherever we're not putting soil and silt into the stream, which are what they're doing right now, we're obviously reducing our sediment load to those waters. It also has some other benefits, just more generic. And you guys are all very wise to this. Is that adding trees and ensuring good tree health and canopy and all of the uptake that they do for water and things like that. So there's some a little bit more oblique connections there. But yeah, they do certainly help the Chesapeake goals, Chesapeake Bay and Chesapeake ordinance goals that we have.
Great, great. Okay, I don't want to prolong my time on the mic. So remind me, Marco, do we want people to raise their hands?
Yes, from the commission, that I think that would work.
Okay, commissioners, if you have questions or comments, can you raise your hand?
Don't see any hands raised from our commission at this point.
Okay, so why don't we move to Forestry and Natural Resources Commission? You'll be speaking as a public commenter if you choose to speak. Eric, you floored everybody.
Well, everybody's just thinking very hard to get you questions. So when we meet, we can sort them out.
Or Joe, we could. Oh, I see Mark's hand is up. Is that actually from our commission?
Okay, good.
All right. And you'll have to bear with me. One of my AirPods just died, so I might have to switch microphones. But
I think he might have cut off. Mark, can you hear us?
all right, can you hear me?
We can now. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Apple products. All right. I guess I didn't realize that you have a system for scoring how based on population and diversity and so forth on figuring out which parks either get services, renovation, or capital improvement or whatever. But along the same lines, if you're using this sort of a scoring system to provide funds to do capital improvement on the parks, why aren't we using something similar to allocate the park usage? I'm just sort of blown away by the fact that we're putting money into parks based on the scoring system, but we're not actually providing access to the parks using a similar system. It seems odd to me that we would pour money into the parks based on this scoring system and then use a completely separate scheduling system for parks, especially parks that have sports facilities in them. Is there anything you can provide on that subject?
So what I would say is obviously I think it's kind of more of a sort of an operating question for our athletic facility services group. We can certainly take back the question, the concern, because I will be honest, I'm not completely knowledgeable, if you will, on the reservation system or or how things are allocated between the different leagues and things like that. So I would not want to talk out of turn on that. But I can certainly take that back. I mean, with Jane and the Divinci's over there, and I can raise it, or I can certainly, we can work with Marco to provide some thoughts back, via email, if you would like.
I would appreciate it. I've brought this up to the county board before, and I still am waiting for a response from 2 board members on this subject, and I've gotten nothing. So I have to be honest, I don't expect a response. So if you can find out, find a response, that would be great. But I continue to be disappointed on this. Every time I bring this sort of subject up to the board. So
Can I
that's
ask
all.
one? So can I ask one clarifying question? Just so I can phrase the question correctly. When you were talking about sort of equity system based on use, are you talking about things that may or uses that may have more participation, getting a greater allocation, or is it more based on equity of distribution of that access via across the board, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, and I don't want to just go down this rabbit hole, but the capital improvement plan now, originally the county manager had scheduled the conversion of Kenmore from turf. I believe it was 2032 was the schedule for it. It's been bumped up to 2025 as it stands right now. I don't know if that will change, if that's a hard and fast schedule, if the money's been allocated. I don't really know where that stands, but the reality is that's another sports facility that's in the south of the county that will be dominated by the north of the county. And again, looking at this fund allocation based on equity and diversity, somehow that doesn't make sense. If a park in the south of the county is going to get funds and resources to renovate it or improve it, but then the community that surrounds that facility doesn't get to use it. I don't really understand how that works, but it seems to be the way things work. And I don't get it. I've never understood it, but that's just sort of the way it works. I've been on this commission for 5.5 years, and I continue to ask these kinds of questions, and I don't get any response. It's like it's a subject that nobody wants to really talk about, and I find that bizarre, especially in Arlington County, Virginia. I find that strange, but maybe it's just me.
Thanks, Mark. This is Jill. Just following up on that, I think I would word the question, does the equity wheel, first of all, just maybe you could clarify, Eric, does this equity wheel apply to fields or just parks?
So the equity wheel is part of the diversity and equity initiative, the race and diversity initiative the county has at large. So the county is supposed to, the idea is that this wheel are the series of 5 questions that the different departments, operating groups, management groups supposed to use to ensure that they are asking the right questions, they are getting to the right populations, they are getting to the right users, or to see who's not involved. So it does not apply to any specific program, but it is a general guide that has come out of that initiative over the last 2 years to be able to apply sort of thoughtful questions to the work that everybody's doing. So I don't mean to hedge on that, Jill, but it's generally supposed to kind of apply to everything, but it's not a specific kind of thing. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't ask it with precision, but you have a table where you've added up the equity score to the, that one. Is Kenmore on there?
So Kenmore is not on here. We do have a number for Kenmore. These scores were just the ones that are in our master plan category. And one of the things that may be helpful, and I can give Marco the link. So we did had a much more thorough description of this to the county board when we presented the PAYGO in April. And so there's obviously my presentation of the board is online there, and it's based, and we kind of describe how the system works. And then there are some full tables that have all of the parks in the county. Kenmore is not a county park, but we could apply it to it if we wanted to. And so, but this is honestly, and I do apologize. This is sort of was a small part of that presentation was sucked out here as part of the reminder that we'll talk about with the board when we present to the board, and that's because they had the benefit of the previous presentation. So I do apologize for giving you sort of half a story on this.
No, I understand, but I think it's just one way of looking at this is the question on the wheel is who's missing. And I think that really gets to the heart of what Mark wants to know is when you've got Kenmore, when you're considering what to do at Kenmore, is one of the considerations the fact that it's in a neighborhood, that has equity issues. But who's missing? Are we actually getting kids on the field from that neighborhood? So, okay.
I just wanted to, this is Lizzie Stell.
Excuse me. Oh yeah,
yes.
Lizzie, you can talk. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that, from my experience with scheduling fields is that, a lot of times, even when a field is renovated, it sort of stays in the same, like, who's been scheduling it, who's been using it, like the school is going to use that field. And then there's, lacrosse uses it and soccer uses it and, various groups. I think the county, I think they do make modifications as they have new sports and different requirements. I'm sure baseball will want to use that field more once the lights are better. I know that the lights there haven't been great for baseball. So I do think that the county will reevaluate who uses it, but they wouldn't necessarily say, oh, this group has used it 40% of the time, we're now giving them 0. I think all of their allocations seem to be relatively, trying to be fair to groups. So I just wanted to mention that because I there's not like a backup field that, people can go to if that one needs to be reallocated somewhere else.
Okay, thanks so much, Lizzie. I don't see any more hands raised.
My hand is raised.
Oh, good. Okay. Melissa.
Yes. Yes, Eric, thanks for the presentation. That was really good and in depth. I had a quick clarification question. I'm not as maybe educated on this sort of topic, but if you can go back to the boathouse slide, the mention of it. I think I was reading up and it looks like it's partially on National Park Service land. Does that mean that they're partially supporting it budget-wise? I don't know if that involves anything or it's purely Arlington.
Yeah. So the Park Service has been working sort of with us there was an EA that was done, and then there's some was a memorandum of understanding that the board worked through, and then there will be some different agreements for management agreement. They basically the only thing they're contributing is the staff time to get the agreements in place with us. The investment on the boathouse itself is a county would be a county investment. One of the things I didn't mention there too is that I think the first year, and I don't have this number right in front of me. I think because the lower part of the site is on NPS land, and that is mainly where the boats are stored, and they will go out. And then the upper site could be a restroom and things like this. That part is farther off in the CIP. The earlier part, I think, is about a $15 million investment total. Brittany might be able to confirm that for me in the chat. And however, out of that, I think there's about $6 million in outside funding source that the board is asking to do. So it is a very sizable lean on the not the user groups. There's a Boathouse Foundation and potentially maybe federal grants that are going to be not grants, federal earmark kind of things that will be looked for to bring in to help fund that. It's a 15.865 in FY28, so it's about $16 million. And so there's a sizable chunk of money that the county is looking for outside support with, but the remainder of that would be county funding.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. Alex?
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I have a question about the 3 urban parks project. I noticed that the budget there was for about $8 million for these 3 small parks. I'm pretty familiar with them. I've lived in that neighborhood for quite some time. Could you talk a little bit about what is envisioned for these pretty
So-
small parks?
Yeah, so actually, and the $8 million probably looks a little bit inflated because there's also design money in that. So I think there's probably about $1 million worth of design money in there. So it's quite, but it's still a pretty healthy amount of money. Honestly, there is not a vision for those parks right now. That's why we're hopefully kicking off our master plan, work with the community a little bit later this year. I think summertime is our time frame right now. Obviously, there are some existing facilities in Maury Park. I think there's a court over there. There's the art modern Arlington Modern Art Museum, and we've also added property over there. So there's on the other side of that driveway or the parking area, there used to be a coin shop that is now county property, and so it's a little bit larger than the parks as people think about them, but we don't really have necessarily a vision for them. That's why we want to get in and talk with the community on it, because yeah, there's probably pretty good limitations on what you might want to do at Gumball Park. It's not very big, right? But it may just be some pleasant improvements in there. But this is intended to sort of allocate that money amongst the 3 in whatever appropriate way it would be, and whatever the kind of agreed upon community master plan comes up. And the board would adopt that plan. Obviously, so we'll have a process with the community, kind of probably three meetings or more, and then there would be a board adoption of that. So that way we have hopefully a good solid consensus on what should be happening there. But I can tell you, for Parks Department, we don't necessarily have a vision of this should be added here, that should be added there. It's mostly it's time to address those parks, and we just want to make sure we had the right, enough budget to do what we could with that with them.
Understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Alex. We're now past the time that we had allocated on the agenda for this item, but I don't want to cut off anybody, especially from the other commissions who could ask questions through the public comment function.
And Jill, what we can do too is we can essentially say this is the beginning of the public comment period. So if you do wish to speak on this item, just raise your hand. We'll recognize you. Please identify your name, your organization, or if you're speaking on behalf of yourself, and we'll go ahead and do that accordingly. Does anyone wish to speak? All right, hearing none, I think that's it.
Okay, let's just remind everybody that Eric will be giving a presentation to myself and the other 2 chairs of the commission on June 7th. I'd really like to get your questions far in advance of that. I think there is also a casual commitment to answer things in writing if we get them in early. So please think this through and help us cooperate with the schedule that's been outlined. I think it's a very ambitious budget, but it's got a lot of our priorities addressed. And I can't thank you enough, Eric, for taking the time to come over and go through such a complex program of spending in such a short amount of time. So thank you so much. If there's more, we will let you guys go.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate being here and your flexibility to make sure we could have the conversation before the work session and the adoption. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess I should put my camera on while I'm talking, should I? Sorry.
Yes.
All right, so next up we have Marco, who is going to give a presentation on emergency preparedness, right?
All right, yes, I will go ahead and share my screen. Let's make sure I have everything I need here. Just wanted to make sure, can everyone see my screen there?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So yes, this is a topic that I wanted to touch upon for the commission. As staff, we did receive or have received over the course of several years much direction in terms of emergency preparedness within Bosman Government Center, but also throughout facilities in the county. So, anything from community centers, nature centers, at parks, And just wanted to provide an opportunity tonight to quickly go through some of what we do, where our emergency equipment is located, especially when we're conducting hybrid meetings within Bosman Government Center, and just some information that's just good to know, phone numbers and things like that. So hopefully this will be very informative for the commission. Go to the next slide. Give me 1 second. All right, so again, as I mentioned, it's important to realize where important equipment, safety equipment, emergency exits, and other resources are located in case of a medical emergency. Of course, we hope none of that happens during our time together or when you're in the government building. But typically within Bosman Government Center, there are central locations for emergency equipment and other associated resources. And as I mentioned before, it's important to be aware of your surroundings, where that equipment is available when visiting our various facilities. This slide shows essentially the first floor of Bosman Government Center. I just took some photos of where the main locations of these emergency equipment are located. There in the first photo, you can see the first floor lobby area, and in the background there, that's the east building entrance and exit as you come in and out of our building. The following photo shows the first floor water station area and fire extinguisher, which is next to the south building stairwell. Included there is also a landline telephone, and for folks just to be aware, when using that telephone, it would only access, or you would only have access to Arlington County government numbers or 911, and 911, I should say. So, and some other information just to be aware of during any hybrid meeting of this commission or of any other commission emanating from Bosman Government Center, we of course would have security staff and support staff available during those meetings in the first floor in case anything were to arise. And the final photo on this slide, there is next to the public notice area, there's a fire extinguisher, and that's on the northeast building entrance and exit. On the second floor, outside of the Dogwood conference room, that is the conference room right opposite ours, where we typically meet on the second floor, which is the Cherry conference room. Right there, there's another fire extinguisher that can be used in the case of emergency, as well as a pull-down fire alarm located right across of that conference room and next to the stairwell from the second floor leading into the first floor. The second floor elevator area has various equipment, including AED or defibrillator devices. There's 2 of them on either side of that vestibule area, located on the second floor. Other floors within the county have a similar setup, so you'll be able to find that equipment accordingly within third floor and others within the county. Of course, in case of any sort of emergency drills or emergency situations, including an active shooter response, the protocol is to run, hide, or fight. Of course, if there is something that's occurring within the building, and if you can, the first thing to do, of course, is to run away from an active threat if you can. If not, hiding would be the next response. And that could be by locking yourself within a meeting room or a room that's within the county that you're visiting, barricading that door, avoiding any sort of windows or visible access to the room if you can, and silencing your phones. If it were to come to the point where we would need to be in a fighting situation, of course, using furniture or any sort of equipment or other fixtures that you might find to defend yourself in such a response. And of course, if there is an opportunity to call 911 during that, that would be the first thing to do if there is that sort of threat occurring. In terms of fire extinguisher use, we have the pass method that is essentially pulling the pin of the fire extinguisher. aiming the nozzle at the base of the fire and squeezing the operating handle to release the extinguishing agent, and then sweeping from side to side at the base of the fire. In any emergency fire response or other emergency, if the fire can't be extinguished, 911 should be called and an evacuation started of any members that may be caught within that sort of situation. In terms of defibrillator use, the defibrillator devices that are located within the county building contain user instructions accordingly for their use. In terms of emergency exits, during an emergency, of course, we do not want to use building elevators, instead to proceed to the nearest emergency exit or egress. Within Bosman Government Center and the first floor, that's typically located on the east end of the building. There are 3 exits on the north, east, and south sides. Within the photos that you saw earlier, I pointed out the east exit where most of folks come in and out of the building when attending either commission meetings or board meetings, or providing any other service or any other needed service within the building. In terms of the second floor, on the east side of the building, there, of course, is a stairwell on the southeast side of the building that can be used for emergency exit and access. And another thing to be aware of during hybrid meetings, I will have a first aid kit on hand that can be used in case of an emergency. So that will be at the commission and my disposal during the time of our meeting. And in case you need help, of course, call 911 for any severe medical emergencies, including those that are listed here on this slide. Other important numbers to note is the non-emergency request number, the fire chief's office and the email associated with that, and the fire prevention line and the email associated with that as well. That's just for any further information that you might have or any questions that you might have related to emergencies. Those would be really great context to have on hand for that. So I ran through that pretty quickly, but I wanted to make sure that I also had time for any questions if there are any. And I see Alex has his hand up.
I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Maybe
okay.
never got brought down before. I don't have a question.
Sounds good. I see Gary has his hand up.
Yes, in some government buildings I've worked in, they had a rule that if the building had to be evacuated, they wanted those evacuated to gather at a certain location outside the building. Is there any rule to that effect in place?
So there was previously when we were conducting drills, there was a central location for our suite staff, and that was right at the courthouse plaza area. So where the courthouse is across the street, that plaza area was our gathering spot. I think the current guidance is to just essentially escape the building as fast as possible and find the safest location as you can. Of course, if I can rally up folks and lead them to a secure location or to a safer location, I will certainly do so as part of our evacuation routine.
Okay, thank you. It makes sense.
Any other questions?
This is great, Marco. I would ask you to put that slide on with the phone numbers one more time. I'm going to put it in my
Go ahead and
notebook
do that.
right now. So I don't have to remember to do it later.
Again, that's the non-emergency request line. That's 558 quadruple 2. 703-228-3362 is the fire chief's office, and the email is attached there. And 703-228-4644. That's the fire prevention line, and the email is provided. Of course, this presentation is also uploaded on our webpage, so you'll have access to all of that information, including the emails accordingly.
Great. Thank you so much. This is not pleasant to think about, and now that we know it, hopefully we won't ever have to use it.
And the information will be accessible to our commission at any time since we'll have the presentation up there. So if you need to review that content, I would encourage you to do so at your leisure.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any more questions on that. So let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is the staff report.
Yes. So related to the staff reports, well, first of all, I wanted to mention the 2023 Bill Thomas Park Volunteer Award. We do have a call on for nominations occurring right now. That'll be live through Thursday, June 6th. I sent earlier an email to our listserv just providing that reminder to please spread the word out to any organizations or any folks that might be interested in submitting any nominations. And I believe there are some attachments there to an Instagram and Facebook and other sort of, I guess, media posts that have been associated related to that too. So would be really helpful to spread the word on that. If we need to extend the period to provide for nominations, we'll certainly consider that. But right now, we're targeting this to be live through Thursday, June 6th.
And I think that deadline was based off of the experience from last year. So we don't want to have to be rushed and we want to have a nice celebration.
Correct. And oh yes, so just to piggyback off of that, we're still, you know, anticipating having the committee come on over the summer, reviewing those applications accordingly, nominations, I should say, and then coming back to the larger commission in September with their nominees. And then the PRC would then act via vote. So we'll certainly want to have quorum at that point. Well, we'll always want to have quorum, but in terms of voting opportunity for the 2023 park nominee then. And then in October is when we're anticipating having the recognition ceremony during the county board's recess meeting for that month, and then potentially a reception thereafter.
Great, thank you.
Another item that I wanted to raise is related to virtual only meetings. So I believe I made mention of this in one of our previous meetings. Starting July 1st, our commission will have an opportunity to assess whether or not we would like to add on any future virtual only meetings to our schedule, whether or not that's something we can be that can be done right at the beginning of this fiscal year, amending our calendar year for 2024, or if it will actually take effect calendar year 2025. That's something that we're still, you know, we need a county attorney's office guidance related to that to see if we can do any sort of amendments to our year schedule for this year. But just to say that now, instead of 25% of our meetings can be virtual only, that's been raised to 50%. One thing that I believe came out of the last discussion that we had was whether or not there was any feeling that we would not be meeting quorum in person for a meeting. Could we revert to an all virtual meeting in order to do that easily? We cannot do that. So just to clarify, once we have a particular meeting structure that is identified and advertised, that is what we would need to be, move forward with. Also, related to virtual meetings, we cannot have concurrent virtual meetings or all virtual meetings. So for example, if we have this meeting this month, we would not be able to have another all virtual meeting in June. However, we would be able to have another one in July. So we could alternate one meeting after another, or one meeting we could have an all virtual meeting, another could be hybrid, and then another can be all virtual, and so forth. So that could be the structure that could be adopted moving forward. Or if we all believe that this current structure works out great, we can certainly do that as well. So that's just something to keep in mind in terms of how we're able to conduct business either in a virtual only format or in a hybrid format. related to the electronic meetings policy, if some commissioners may not be aware of this, we adopted an electronic meetings policy 2 years ago that essentially details out these procedures. New language would need to be adopted within that policy pretty soon to identify what we can do regarding virtual only meetings and everything else. Again, we're going to be receiving guidance from our county attorney's office to see when we would need to readopt that meetings policy, whether it's sometime this summer or in the fall. So once I have more information related to that, I'll share that with the commission. There was also some question related to meeting quorum and how we're addressing that. So as it relates to in-person quorum and your ability to participate in projects or emails or other sorts of get-togethers within the commission. We are refrained, or I guess the commission cannot have more than 2 active members participating in any sort of initiative or project or email actively. Otherwise, if we have 3 or more commission members participating, it could be constituted as a public meeting, and we would have to advertise that accordingly. When it comes to inter-commission or I guess intra-commission participation on projects, so for example, if we have the PRC, the FNRC, the C2E2 working together on an initiative or a project, those members can meet together, but only up to 2 members of each one of those commissions can meet together at any given time. So you could have 2 PRC members, 2 FNRC members, and 2 C2E2 members participating in an initiative. So no more than 3 is essentially, or three or more is what we would not be able to provide for any sort of initiative. And then for that, we would be running into some FOIA concerns and issues. So just wanted to provide some clarity on that. But Jill, I don't know if you had any other thoughts on that or anything else that you wanted to add.
Well, I'm afraid this might put you on the spot, so you can follow up later. But for example, we're going to be drafting this letter for the county board in response to the capital budget.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we do that by email?
So what'll happen is you would have to take those conversations offline. So you can essentially request for comment on that letter, but then the commissioner that would like to comment on that letter would respond to you directly.
So I, as chair, if I copy you as staff, can send a draft to the entire PRC?
We can send a draft, but we would not be able to collaborate on it or provide overall comments as part of that large listserv, if that makes sense.
So it can be a one-way from me or you to the whole commission, and then the commissioners individually would write back just to me or just to you?
Either to you and Gary, and myself copied as well, because again, it would be up to
Gary, and that's 3 of us.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It would either be you or Gary.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, they're putting us in a box here. Okay. With this short time frame and then this issue. Yeah, I did want to bring up, we had the commission chairs had a meeting that's similar to the meeting that Marco and the staff of the commissions had. And I don't want to go into it in too much detail. We're going to have time at the next meeting, considering it's already almost 8:30. But we thought at the June meeting, we would go over in detail some of the things that are in the handbook, and also talk about renewing the charter, which is about 5 years old. But one of the things I noticed in the handbook, and I don't know why I've never seen the handbook until I went to this meeting, is a very helpful thing that explained that we're not entitled to communicate as a commission to any other public body such as the federal government or, you know, another state commission or anything. What we're supposed to do is limit ourselves to communications to the county board. So it was my fault when we discussed the idea of writing about the pollution control plant flood wall, that I thought that was something that we would be entitled to do. But as it turns out, we're not. But what we could have done if we had acted in time is we could have written a letter to the county board asking the board to make their views known to the Corps of Engineers. But I thank you, Adriana, for bringing that to our attention. I don't want to in any way discourage that. I think we all need to bring things up that we think are important, and we'll figure out a way to get them addressed. So I think that's all I had to say on that. Thank you.
And that's it from my end, Jill, on the staff reports.
Oh, well, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about, which is the Gulf Branch Stream Restoration Advisory Committee. This is another one where we got a little bit sideways on these new rules because somebody from the DES contacted me who had been at the Gulf Branch meeting to see if they wanted to do it, when in fact, what we're finding is that I should have only contacted one person at a time, and it's not copacetic for us to have 3 PRC commissioners on the Gulf Branch Advisory Commission. So I think Alex and Gary and myself were all interested. We can go offline and you guys can communicate with me one at a time. But before we do that, I'd like to know, is anybody else potentially interested in serving on the Gulf Branch Stream Advisory Committee? And if you think about it and you decide you want to, just communicate with me directly. But there is a meeting coming up, I think, in June. So either Gary or Alex or I will represent us, and we'll fill that in at the next meeting. Let's see, is there anything else anybody wants to highlight on any of the upcoming, any site plan review things?
This is Melissa. I noticed some had vacancies. Just double check which ones for backups. Is that something we're actively looking to fill right now, or?
Well, the Gulf Branch one, yeah, we're gonna try to fill that.
Yes, Melissa, I think right now I have noted the Barcroft Department land use analysis process. Nelson is leading that, but we don't have a secondary. And then we have the Clarendon Presbyterian Special GLEP study. Jill is leading that, but we don't have a secondary. And then
actually today that one was withdrawn.
That one was withdrawn. Okay, so we can take that out then. Okay.
Yeah, just withdrawn.
And then the NSTA site, which is the 1840 Wilson Boulevard. Neil is leading that, but we don't have a secondary on that. So those are the 3 that I have listed right now.
Okay, I can secondary on NSTA.
NSTA, great.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Melissa.
Yep.
And I'm willing.
And yeah, sorry, Jill.
No, go
one
ahead.
quick update on Barcroft is that it was like a 5-part thing. I'm not sure what's happening beyond this next meeting. I believe the commitment will be wrapped up from the official capacity, and we're going to be hearing from them, I believe, at the end of June. Someone from that project for county staff will be coming, and I'll do a little write-up on my thoughts and what I've heard as part of that process, but I don't think we'll need a secondary for that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Nelson. And actually, just to follow up on that, Nelson, yes, you're correct. We do have the Barcroft MFDP lined up as an agenda item for our next meeting in June.
And just be warned, it's a 1 hour.
Okay, great.
It's a 1 hour presentation. It's tell us again.
It's a hefty project.
MF, it stands for what again?
Master Finance and Development Plan.
Okay, yeah, it's a very specialized thing. It involves a huge area of land. So Nelson, you're anticipating that we won't need to write a letter, or do you think we will?
I think that
Did we lose
deep in
Nelson?
rounds now after the working session with all of the. Can you hear me?
Oh, now we hear you. Yeah.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. They we had the working group series, and now they're going to all the commissions, and then they'll be presenting to the county board at some point later this summer. So I think it could be nice to write a letter and useful to write a letter on this.
Okay. Yeah. So if you feel like you have the time and the bandwidth, if you could kind of sketch out the points that we should be paying attention to in the presentation before the presentation, that would be really, really helpful. Yeah. Great.
Yep.
Okay.
I can draft up the letter and then email some bullets from the broader conversation as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. If you feel like it, that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. Good. All right. I don't think there's anything else except, oh, Shruti, did you want to say anything about the Public Spaces Master Plan Implementation Advisory Committee? Or no?
Sure. Yeah, we had a very productive and good Q2 update meeting from Irina and Jane last quarter. And we're anticipating having a July meeting that will involve some sort of in-person component. And we will definitely be getting out the invite to everyone on this call when that happens. But still kicking away. Just as a reminder, we meet quarterly to talk about improvements or updates to the Public Spaces Master Plan. And yeah, I sit on it with Jill. And so we will be sure to get you more updates as they come out, especially about that July meeting.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, are we ready for other business? Any more comments on those? And thank you everybody who's attending these meetings and paying attention to the issues that are important to us. Okay, so the next thing we have is other business. We've discussed already that we'll be writing a letter to the county board on the capital budget. As I mentioned already, there's a meeting scheduled with Eric to answer your questions if you didn't ask them tonight and you still have them on June 7th. What I hope to do before that time is send out a draft budget one at a time to a few people and get their comments, and then a draft letter, and then I'll send it to the entire commission. But please send me your questions the minute they occur to you. I don't mind getting multiple emails because this is really truncated. You know, we're scrambling here. So just go ahead and do the best you can in getting me your questions answered. But I think that's the only letter that we have for this month.
Yes.
Are there any questions about that process of getting the letter done? Okay. All right. The next one is the field trip. Do you want to take that one, Marco?
Yeah. So of course, for folks that have been on this commission, and also for those who are just joining us this year, this is actually a really fun event for the PRC. So in August, we have typically a field trip that is scheduled. So it could be to a newly developed park. It could be to a community center, even a nature center or anything like that. That commission members would be interested in visiting. Right now, we have identified 2 dates in August. I believe it's the 3rd and the 4th August, or Tuesday, I should say, of the month. That's August 20th and August 27th. So if there's any date in particular that may work for the commission as a whole, you know, please reach out to myself or Jill, and we can figure out what would be the best date for that. And also any ideas related to a site visit. So if there's something that you really want to see or something that you're thinking about would be great to visit, please let us know, and I can always coordinate with our staff for a tour or any sort of follow-up that we might be able to provide the commission. One thing to note is for these field trips in August, we typically begin our meeting an hour earlier. So they would start at 6 p.m. and typically run 1 hour. It's essentially just to provide for any public comment if there is any, adopt the meeting minutes, and then go straight on to the tour. So that would be a 1 hour meeting from 6 to 7, either on August 20th or the 27th.
Does anybody have any suggestions of what they'd like to see?
And again, not to put anyone on the spot, if there's anything that you guys want to consider, please let me know and Jill know, and we can best coordinate that.
We kicked around a couple ideas earlier today, but we can hold that. It's getting late, so we can hold that for the next meeting. But give some thought to where you'd like to go.
Great. And that's it for me.
All right, and I think we're at the end of the agenda. Is there any other business that hasn't been brought up yet? Anybody would like to bring up? Okay, well, if not, I just want to note that the next meeting is June 25th at 7 p.m. It'll be an in-person hybrid meeting. And I just want to again welcome Daniel as a new member, and I appreciate everybody's attention during this difficult capital budget discussion. But I was very pleased with what I saw, so I hope you guys were too. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thanks,
Good
Mark.
night.
Thanks.
Good night.
All right, everyone.
Night.